Welcome to Deep Dive. Today,
We're diving into Agriculture for Beginners, a book
yeah,
published over a century ago. Now, before you think we're going to get bogged down in outdated practices, trust me,
right.
this book offers a treasure trove of timeless wisdom. Really is
Absolutely.
surprisingly relevant to modern agriculture.
It's fascinating how a book written for teachers back then can still resonate with anyone, really, who's interested in where their food comes from and the delicate balance of nature that makes it all possible.
Yeah, and it really
Mhm.
brings you back to the basics in a way.
Yeah,
So let's dig in. The book starts with the most fundamental element of farming, the soil. It's easy to take soil for granted,
absolutely.
but it's anything but simple. It's a complex ecosystem,
It really
a
is.
history book of geological processes
Mhm.
that have unfolded over millennia.
Yeah, and the book really drives this point home with its description of soil formation. Imagine the slow, relentless forces of weathering, where air, moisture, even frost gradually break down rock. The book estimates it takes a staggering 728,000 years to wear away just 39 inches of limestone. Really makes you appreciate the immense timescale at play here.
Wow, talk about patience, right?
Yeah,
It makes you realize that fertile land is a precious and finite resource.
it is.
But it's not just weathering that shapes our soil, right? The book also mentions glaciers.
Oh, absolutely. Glaciers, these massive rivers of ice, have carved their way across continents,
Yeah.
breaking and pulverizing rock, contributing to the diversity of soils we see today. It's mind-boggling to think about these powerful forces shaping the very ground we walk on.
Yeah, it paints a vivid picture
Yeah,
of Earth's dynamic history, that's for sure.
it does.
Okay, so we have our soil formed over eons,
Hmm.
but to actually grow things, you need to work with it, right?
You do.
And that brings us to a fascinating figure in agricultural history, Jethro Tull.
Ah, Jethro Tull. What I find so fascinating about him is that he was a champion of thorough tilling, long before the science behind it was understood. He had this saying, "Tillage is manure," which perfectly captures his intuitive grasp of the link between soil aeration and plant growth.
So even back then, farmers were experimenting, observing, figuring out what worked best.
They were.
It speaks to the importance of that hands-on knowledge,
Yeah.
something this book really emphasizes.
Absolutely. And now, of course, we understand the science behind Tull's observations. Tilling allows air to circulate in the soil, which is crucial for breaking down organic matter and making nutrients more available to plants. The book actually draws a fascinating parallel between this process and how air affects old buildings.
Oh yeah, it mentions how air, specifically the carbonic acid it contains, contributes to the crumbling of stone and brick over time. It's incredible how those same forces are at work in both scenarios.
Exactly. It shows that the principles of agriculture are all around us, even in the most unexpected places. It's about understanding these fundamental processes, whether you're tending a field or simply observing the world around you.
It makes you think about air differently, not just
Mm.
something we breathe,
Yeah.
but an active ingredient in a healthy, productive environment. So we've got the soil, we're aerating it, but plants need to eat too, right?
You do, yes.
And this is where things get really interesting because the book delves into this concept of plant food.
Yes. And it does so in a way that's still relevant today. It breaks down the essential plant nutrients, what we now know as NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and explains their importance in a simple, easy to understand way.
Okay, so let's unpack this NPK acronym a bit.
Yeah.
Why are these three elements so crucial? What do they actually do for plants?
So each one plays a specific and vital role. Think of them as the key ingredients in a plant's diet. Nitrogen, for instance, is like protein for plants. It's crucial for leafy growth and overall plant vigor.
So if you see a plant looking a bit yellowish and weak, it might be lacking nitrogen.
Exactly. Now, phosphorus, that's like the energy booster. It supports root development, flowering, and fruit production.
And that's why it's essential for those of us hoping for a bountiful harvest. Okay, so what about potassium?
Potassium is like the all-around health manager. It helps with overall plant health, disease resistance, stress tolerance.
So it's not just about growing big and strong, it's about building resilience too.
Absolutely.
And the book explains how different crops have different appetites for these nutrients, leading to this really important concept of crop rotation.
Precisely. Crop rotation is like a balanced diet for your soil.
That makes sense.
You wouldn't want to eat the same thing every day, and neither does your soil. Different crops deplete and replenish nutrients in varying ways.
The book gives a great example with wheat. Wheat is a heavy nitrogen feeder,
Right.
meaning it gobbles up nitrogen from the soil. If you plant wheat in the same field year after year, you'll deplete the nitrogen, leading to poor yields and potentially harming soil health in the long run.
Exactly. That's why it's crucial to rotate with a nitrogen-fixing crop like clover. Clover has these incredible nodules on its roots that harbor bacteria, and these bacteria can actually pull nitrogen from the air and convert it into a form that plants can use, replenishing the soil naturally.
So it's like a natural fertilizer factory.
Yeah.
And this concept of crop rotation, of understanding the needs of different plants, working with the natural cycles of the soil, it's fascinating how this wisdom from a century ago is still so relevant, especially now with the growing interest in organic and sustainable farming practices. But once we've got the soil ready and the nutrients sorted, how do we actually make more plants? Yeah. That brings us to the intriguing and, dare I say, slightly spicy world of plant reproduction.
It is remarkable, isn't it? We think of agriculture as very grounded, but it all hinges on this almost invisible process happening above the soil. The book dives into how pollen, carrying the male genetic material, needs to find its way to the stigma, the female part of the flower. It's fascinating how this can happen through the wind with the help of busy insects or even other clever methods that plants have developed.
And some plants really benefit from a bit of a social life. The book mentions how a single corn stalk standing alone doesn't yield much. It needs those neighboring stalks to really get things going.
Exactly. Cross-pollination is key for corn because the male and female parts are separated on the plant. So relying solely on the wind to carry pollen from the tassels to the silks of the same stalk isn't very efficient. Having multiple plants increases the chances of successful pollination and ultimately a more bountiful harvest.
Right, the plant world has its own matchmaking service. And once that pollination magic happens, we get fertilization, and then the real show begins, seed production. This is where the book delves into the concept of plants coming true to seed, a principle that has huge implications for agriculture.
Absolutely. Coming true to seed means that the offspring of a plant will closely resemble the parent plant. Think of crops like wheat, tomatoes, cotton. You plant a seed from a tasty tomato, and you're likely to get more tasty tomatoes. But as the book points out, it's not always that straightforward. Some plants, like apples and peaches, are a bit more unpredictable.
Right. If you plant a seed from that delicious Honeycrisp apple, you're not guaranteed to get another Honeycrisp. You might end up with something completely different, maybe even a crab apple.
Exactly. And that's why understanding this principle is so important, especially for farmers trying to maintain specific varieties with desirable traits. It highlights the importance of careful seed selection, which the book goes into in great detail.
The book even offers specific advice for improving crops by selecting seeds from the most productive plants. For instance, with cotton, it suggests choosing seeds from plants with an abundance of well-filled bolls, those fluffy white capsules that contain the cotton fibers.
It's all about paying close attention to the characteristics of your plants and making informed choices about which seeds to save for the next generation. This concept of selective breeding, though practiced for centuries, forms the foundation for many modern agricultural practices. Think of all the different varieties of fruits, vegetables, and grains we have today, all with specific traits tailored to our needs and preferences. It all stems from this fundamental understanding of plant reproduction and careful seed selection.
It's a testament to the enduring power of these simple yet profound principles. But it's not just about maximizing yield, is it? The book also stresses the importance of understanding the specific needs of each plant, especially when it comes to market gardening and horticulture. Something that resonates with our backyard gardeners out there.
Absolutely. Whether you're tending a vast field or a small plot in your backyard, working with nature, understanding the unique requirements of different plants is essential. The book highlights how factors like soil temperature can play a crucial role in a plant's success.
Yeah, it uses the example of peas and corn. Peas, being a cool season crop, can handle those chilly spring soils, while corn, a warm season crop, needs those temperatures to really thrive. Planting them at the right time, understanding their needs, can make all the difference.
It's about working smarter, not harder. The book goes on to provide detailed information about various crops, almost like a gardener's encyclopedia from a bygone era.
It even delves into the specifics of growing asparagus, suggesting companion planting techniques to maximize space and productivity in the garden. It's like a gardening hack from a century ago.
Exactly, and these tips aren't just for historical curiosity. Many of these practices, like companion planting and understanding a plant's preferred growing conditions, are experiencing a resurgence in popularity, especially with the growing interest in organic and sustainable gardening practices.
Speaking of sustainable practices, the book section on cotton cultivation offers some surprisingly modern advice, particularly when it comes to soil health.
It specifically challenges a common practice of the time, leaving the soil bare after plowing until next planting season. The book argues that this leaves the soil vulnerable to erosion and nutrient loss, especially during those heavy winter rains.
So instead of leaving the soil exposed, what does it suggest?
It recommends planting a cover crop, like crimson clover, to protect and nourish the soil during the off-season. Cover crops, with their extensive root systems, help prevent erosion, add organic matter, and even fix nitrogen in the soil, improving its overall health and fertility. It's a practice that's becoming increasingly popular in modern agriculture, and it's fascinating to see it advocated for over a century ago.
It just goes to show that many of these time-tested practices are just as relevant today as they were back then. It's about working in harmony with nature's cycles.
Speaking of working with nature, the book's section on peanuts highlights their role as a legume, meaning they have these incredible nodules on their roots that harbor nitrogen-fixing bacteria. It's like having a natural fertilizer factory right there in the soil.
So even a humble peanut can teach us about sustainable farming practices. And speaking of soil health, the book also emphasizes the importance of choosing the right soil type for different crops, using potatoes as a prime example.
It stresses that potatoes need well-drained soil that's light enough for those tubers to expand, but also able to retain moisture during dry periods. It's all about finding that sweet spot for optimal growth and yield. It reminds us that soil isn't just dirt. It's a living ecosystem with specific properties that directly impact plant health.
This deep dive into the world of plants and soil has been fascinating, but our exploration wouldn't be complete without talking about those other key players in agriculture, the animals.
Absolutely, no farm is complete without the animals. And while Agriculture for Beginners might have been written over a century ago, its insights into livestock care and management remain surprisingly relevant. Take horses, for instance. The book delves into the history of different breeds, highlighting how factors like climate and human needs have shaped these majestic creatures over generations.
It's fascinating to think about how those powerful draft horses we often see in old photos were specifically bred for strength and endurance, essential for farm work in a time before tractors and combines.
Exactly. And then you have the more agile riding and driving horses, bred for speed, agility, and responsiveness. The book really emphasizes that each breed has its own unique strengths and needs, a concept that's just as important for responsible horse ownership today as it was back then.
It's about understanding and respecting those differences, seeing these animals as partners, not just tools. And speaking of essential farm partners, the book also dives into the world of dairy farming, a major part of agriculture both then and now.
It explores the different breeds of cows, their characteristics, and how to best care for them to ensure healthy milk production. And it even goes a step further, breaking down the nutritional content of different dairy products like milk, cream, buttermilk, highlighting the value of milk as a complete food.
It's interesting to see how the book emphasizes the importance of cleanliness in dairy farming, something that's still a cornerstone of the industry today.
Absolutely. It stresses the need for clean milking practices and proper handling and storage of milk to prevent spoilage and ensure its safety for consumption. It even provides detailed instructions for cleaning and sterilizing milk utensils, recognizing the importance of hygiene long before modern pasteurization methods were developed.
It's a testament to how those basic principles of hygiene and food safety have always been central to responsible agriculture. And while cows might be the stars of the dairy world, the book doesn't neglect those other woolly wonders, the sheep.
Right. It dives into the different breeds of sheep, their unique characteristics, and the fascinating properties of wool. It describes how the structure of wool fibers naturally helps to repel dirt and keep the sheep's skin clean and dry. It's like they come equipped with their own all-weather gear.
It's a reminder that even something as seemingly simple as sheep's wool is a marvel of natural engineering. And speaking of resourceful animals, the book also covers those champions of efficiency, the pigs.
It traces their lineage back to wild boars and explains how different breeds have been developed for specific purposes, with a particular focus on meat production. But just like with the other livestock, the book stresses the importance of responsible care, emphasizing the need for clean and comfortable living conditions and a balanced diet for healthy growth and well-being.
It speaks to a more holistic approach to animal husbandry, one that considers the ethical implications alongside the practical aspects of raising livestock.
And of course, no discussion of livestock would be complete without mentioning those tiny but mighty pollinators, the bees. Agriculture for Beginners dedicates a whole section to beekeeping, highlighting their crucial role in the ecosystem and the intricate workings of a bee colony.
It's incredible how the book describes the social structure of a beehive, with the worker bees, the drones, and the queen bee, each playing a specific role in this fascinating miniature society.
And it goes beyond just describing their biology. It delves into practical beekeeping practices, like how to protect hives from pests and diseases, advice that remains relevant even today.
It's a testament to the enduring wisdom found within this book, a reminder that while agricultural practices have evolved, those fundamental principles of observation, adaptation, and respect for nature remain timeless. And speaking of timeless wisdom, there's one more section of the book we have to explore, a concept that's as relevant today as it was a century ago: the importance of experimentation and observation.
This is where Agriculture for Beginners truly shines. It moves beyond simply presenting established practices and encourages farmers to become active participants in the process of knowledge creation. It urges them to think critically, question assumptions, and test out different approaches.
It's about embracing that spirit of curiosity and innovation, which is so exciting.
Exactly. The book even suggests setting up test plots to compare the effectiveness of different farming techniques, like varying levels of fertilization or cultivation methods. It's like bringing the scientific method right into the field.
It's citizen science in action. And this concept of experimentation isn't just for seasoned farmers. It's something anyone with a garden, no matter how small, can embrace. Trying out different companion planting combinations, experimenting with natural pest control methods. It's about constantly learning and adapting to the unique conditions of your land and climate.
Precisely. And this emphasis on observation and data collection is more relevant than ever in the age of precision agriculture, where farmers have access to a wealth of information about their soil, their crops, and the environment. But at its core, it's about honing those observational skills, becoming intimately familiar with your land, and using that knowledge to make informed decisions.
It's about becoming a student of your own farm or garden, a concept that resonates deeply with the spirit of the deep dive.
Absolutely. And Agriculture for Beginners encourages this ongoing exploration, reminding us that true knowledge comes from a combination of book learning, hands-on experience, and the willingness to challenge assumptions.
It's about seeing agriculture not just as a set of practices, but as a dynamic relationship between humans and nature, a relationship that requires constant learning, adaptation, and respect. This deep dive into Agriculture for Beginners has been a fascinating journey through time, unearthing wisdom that's as relevant today as it was a century ago.
Indeed. It's a testament to how, even in the face of technological advancements, those fundamental principles of sustainable agriculture, of working in harmony with nature's cycles, remain essential for a thriving and resilient food system.
It leaves us with a profound appreciation for the intricate web of life that sustains us and the generations of farmers who have dedicated their lives to understanding and nurturing that delicate balance.
And as our listeners delve deeper into the world of agriculture, may they approach it with that same spirit of curiosity, respect, and a willingness to learn from both the past and the present.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Agriculture for Beginners. Until next time.